Can I look now? Are we actually? Hey guys, I am currently in Morocco and we're under a wind warning, as you can probably tell. So we arrived yesterday and I didn't know I was going to be here until we were at the gate yesterday. For Christmas, my partner gave me a surprise trip somewhere. He got me one of those like scratch off tickets where when you scratch it off, it shows you where you're going, except he wrote none your business because he didn't want me to know until we were literally on our way here. So he had the tickets on his phone. He had booked our bus tickets to get from Galway to Dublin Airport. He was in charge of scanning me through all the way until we got to our gate, and I wasn't allowed to look at any of the screens or anything, so I didn't even know what the options were. When we finally got to the gate, it turns out that we were flying to Marrakech, so now we're in Morocco. We got here yesterday evening and just walked around a little bit in the market and had dinner last night. And then today we've been exploring the area a little bit more. We're in the old city and we've been going to the markets and stuff. I had to get a few bits and bobs because I did not know we were coming here, so I didn't have a shawl or anything that I could use to cover my head if we were going to any religious sites, stuff like that. So we are spending 2 nights in Marrakech, and then we're going on a tour of the desert for 2 nights, 3 days, and then we're back to Marrakech for 3 nights. And since we have a really long bus ride to and from the desert, I picked up 2 books set in Morocco on my Kindle, and I'm gonna read them while I'm here. So the first is one that was already on my TBR that I actually own a physical copy of somewhere back home in California, I think, actually. And it's called The Time in Between by Maria Dueñas. And this is a historical fiction about this woman who ends up in Morocco. I think her partner left her or something, and she's kind of stuck in Morocco. And she starts making dresses for the wives of Nazis living in Morocco. And she gets embroiled with the British Secret Service, sewing messages for the resistance into the hems of these dresses. So that is a historical fiction. I always enjoy reading about that time period, but I've never read anything set in North Africa during World War II. So I'm excited for a new perspective on that. The other book is called Hope and Other Dangerous Pursuits by Leila Lalami, or maybe it's Lila Lalami. And this is a story following 4 different people who are trying to cross the Strait of Gibraltar from Morocco into Spain illegally. And it follows why these people had to do something so dangerous and leave their entire lives behind, and following why they've risked such a dangerous endeavor to get to Europe and to Spain and to start a new life there. And I believe that this one is just contemporary fiction. So they're 2 very different types of books. I'm excited to read both of them, and I believe we have several hours on the bus tomorrow morning, which is when we're heading to the desert, and then in 3 days heading back. So hopefully I get some good reading done. I've been reading The Time in Between for the last however many hours, because yesterday we were stuck on the bus for about 12 hours because there was a storm and it caused the Atlas Mountains to be, like the pass that we were supposed to take through the Atlas Mountains to be shut down. So we ended up on the bus for a long time, and I'm not loving it. I probably would have stopped reading if I wasn't reading it because we're in Morocco and if we weren't on a bus for an entire day, quite honestly. I just got to like 60% through and the plot that's on the back of the book just started. So it's been a lot of like, not exactly setup because there hasn't really been setup, but just a lot of daily life, but it's all told after the fact, so it feels very remote and there's no depth to it really. Conrad, do you want to tell the people about your book?
About my book?
Yeah. What book are you reading?
I'm reading Project Hail Mary as a recommendation. On what?
A recommendation by who?
From you?
Yeah.
From you. Because I'm a little bit of a sci-fi nerd. However, people are getting on a little bit too much in it for my liking. I think Rocky needs a little nasty side.
No, he doesn't.
I'm still waiting for it to come. He's just boarded his ship, so now they're sharing the same one. But I'm still kind of waiting for him to fuck things up. Can you bleep things out?
I don't need to.
Boobs. Cunt.
Baby,
Fannies.
stop it.
What?
And you're liking it?
I am liking it. I'm enjoying it. It's probably the quickest I've read half a book with thousands of micro naps because reading is very difficult for my small little brain.
Big brain.
Massive brain.
We stopped for a bathroom and snack break. And I got corn nuts. Because I firmly believe they're one of the most underrated snacks. I love corn nuts. And as I was saying before, I'm just not loving my book, unfortunately. I feel like I should keep reading it because the interesting stuff just started, but we're 60% of the way through, so don't love that. And I'm not liking the writing style too much. I'm sounding really negative. And I'm trying not to be too negative about this book, but I feel like it's going to be like maybe a 2-star. So I'm not having the best of times with it. It's still interesting. And it feels like it has potential to be a fun story, but we haven't really gotten there yet. The way that it's written, I don't know if it's the way it's written or the translation, but it keeps you very removed from the author and the events that are happening. So you just don't feel any sort of connection to the characters or what's happening, even though it's like monumental stuff and lives are at risk and you know it's all going to be okay, and it doesn't feel like there's any stakes because it's all being told after the fact.
Hi, as you can probably tell, I'm back in Luxembourg. I wanted to finish this video and give you my final update when I was still in Morocco, but as you can probably tell, I'm getting over being very, very sick. I actually developed strep while I was in Morocco, so my last 2-3 days there were not ideal, but I did end up finishing both books and I wanted to give you a final little update on those. So excuse my voice and how red my nose is from blowing it. I did still have a really, really amazing time in Morocco. If anything, it makes me want to go back because there were a few things that we had planned to do in the last few days that we didn't get to do because I spent a lot of it asleep. So the last time I talked to you, I believe that I told you that I wasn't loving The Time in Between by Maria Dueñas, and unfortunately that held true for the rest of the book. I ended up giving the book 2 stars, which is a bummer for my first book of the year, but I'm not gonna let that dictate my reading for the rest of 2026. There were several reasons that I didn't love this book. The main one was that the writing style felt so detached because it was being told by the main character as a look back on her life. And there are books that do this really well, like I Who I've Never Known Men is told that way, and it's still about this tension and you cared so much for these characters. While for this one, it felt like there were never any stakes because she was telling the story from the future, and it all felt very mechanical. You also never really witnessed anything happening. There would be a lot of buildup to high intensity scenes. There were these life and death situations, but you never actually saw the action happening. She would be like, oh, I'm going to do this thing. And then a paragraph later, she would say, wow, that was really scary, but I'm so glad that it worked out. This is what happened. I also really didn't like the main character. She frankly pissed me off multiple times. And I didn't feel like she had a consistent characterization because the first half of the book, she repeatedly tells you how naive she is. She has no experience with like high class culture, and she has to make herself into this person who will be respected by really well-to-do clients. And she makes it seem like it'll be this really difficult thing to pretend to be someone who's so elegant and so unimpressed by the riches in this high-class society. But at the same time, she proves herself to be a complete social chameleon where she always knows exactly what to say. And it doesn't make any sense. She seems to change from being scared and useless to confident and beguiling within a single page for no apparent reason besides that the plot demands it. Also, this book was pitched as a spy story, and first of all, it's far too long. It's over 600 pages, but the spying doesn't happen until past page 300. There's absolutely no hint that the protagonist has any interest or knowledge of politics until that point. And honestly, even until the very end of the book, in the final scene, she talks about not caring about politics at all. It doesn't really make any sense why she is spying for who she's spying for, because she says herself she doesn't care about politics or who wins this war. She really only cares about herself and making sure her people are safe and happy, which is fair in a situation like this where you're doing anything for survival. But I don't understand why she would put herself at such risk and put her family and friends at such risk when she has the ability to be prosperous in this new business of sewing that she sets up. So I guess I don't really understand her character motivations at all. Again, the writing style just really irks me. It feels almost like it's a draft of a book where all of the author notes on who each character is just left in. And instead of trying to organically develop these characters, she just left in her little notes about their character. For example, she talks about a character and she says that he's a man somewhere between 40 and 50, has good manners, he's a good police officer, but his soul is battered from the job. I'm like, how would she possibly know that when she doesn't even know his age, but she knows how he feels about his job and that his gruff exterior is hiding the pain from the job when she never really gets to know this character very well. I guess it feels like there's inconsistencies with how much the character knows and should know about other characters. So in one scene, a girl will walk in and she'll be like, oh, the 15-year-old girl did this, when she's never met this girl before. Whereas, for example, in this scene, she's saying that he's somewhere between 40 and 50 and has no way of knowing a more precise age, although she's met him several times before and has the context of his life. Yeah, there was a lot I didn't love about this book. It wasn't like offensive, so I didn't give it 1 star, but there were times that I did want to because it pissed me off. It has a really high average rating. It's 4.2 stars with over 50,000 ratings, so I'm obviously in the minority here not liking it, but I found this book deeply, deeply mediocre. And the second book, Hope and Other Dangerous Pursuits by Leila Lalami, is very, very short. And my only complaint about that book was that it was too short. So this is the story of 4 different people who try to cross illegally the Strait of Gibraltar from Morocco into Spain for different reasons. And you get the actual crossing, and then it goes back to their life before they crossed, a combination of why they wanted to, what their life was like, and how they were getting the funds. I feel like I haven't been censored this entire time, but I am too ill to care, so I'm sorry. But anyway, yeah, it goes from the crossing itself to the time before, and then the time after, how the 4 characters managed, whether or not they were successful, and what their lives looked like after the attempted crossing. It felt like a really powerful exploration of hope and desperation, and why someone might choose to undertake such a dangerous crossing to try to build a better life for themselves or their families, or both. I appreciated that most of the stories didn't have a definite ending. I felt like it was a realistic mix of circumstances and outcomes. And I thought it did a good job of conveying the desire for a better life and the hope for different circumstances. And inequality is a really key factor in almost all of the stories. I feel like it just helps readers gain compassion and understanding, especially in an environment right now where there's so much discourse and negative talk about immigration, and there's so much charged language about humans being illegal and aliens, and it shows even just a small window into why people take on such a treacherous journey and risk losing so much for even a tiny chance at a better circumstance. There's such venom when people talk about illegal immigration, and there's so little empathy and compassion and recognition that people leave circumstances because they have no other choice. I feel like that should be so obvious, but to a lot of people it's not. And so having books like this that just humanize people trying to make these journeys, I think, is always important. So I gave this 4 stars. I would have loved it to be a little longer. Not necessarily have each person's story be longer, because I think that the author did a really beautiful job at leaving all of the endings open, but I would have loved to see more people's stories. I mean, I would have read 10, 20 more stories from different perspectives about their crossing or attempted crossing. So those were the 2 books I read on my surprise visit to Morocco. I would have loved to read a book that took place entirely in Morocco, but the only one that I found that I was really interested in was called A Street in Marrakech, and it wasn't available at my library or through Kindle, so I didn't have a way of accessing it, but it is now on my TBR, and I hope to be able to read that at some point in the future. If you have any questions about my experience in Morocco, feel free to leave them. It was my second time there, but it was my first time in big cities. The last time I flew into Agadir, but I immediately went to smaller towns on the coast for a surf trip. If you've read either of these books, let me know what you thought of them. And if you have any other recommendations of books set in Morocco or by Moroccan authors, I would love to hear those. But thanks for watching. Happy New Year, and I'll see you next time.